Just getting a bit of feedback there. A little bit of detail about the SwapCard platform that you're watching the webinar on. It's a networking platform that allows you to meet contacts who've already registered and connect with suppliers and customers. You should go onto your profile and see who's there. It's just like swapping a card. It will also be the platform that we use for live next year. And currently we have 1,400 in our community. So you can go online now or download the app to continue networking with those people who you meet during the webinar. I'm going to introduce your moderator for the day. This is Peter Ward from UK Warehousing Association. Peter will introduce our other expert panelists, and then they'll be saying a few words about how they're helping their customers get ready for Brexit, and then we'll be taking some questions from you. So please, on SwapCard to the right of the screen, put those questions in. But before I introduce Peter, I would just like to say a special thank you to the Port of Dover, who are sponsoring today's event. And you'll be able to see their details on the site as well. So if you need more information about how they can help you, please click there. A few words about our moderator. Peter started in a family freight forwarding business, which was sold to the Fritz companies and on from there, UPS. He's an expert freight forwarder. He then joined P&O Nedlloyd and became an expert shipping line executive. And from there joined DP World as their commercial lead at DP World London Gateway. So he's able to wear many hats. The hat he's wearing at the moment is as Chief Executive of the UK Warehousing Association, representing all the 3PLs and warehouse keepers in the UK. So Peter, over to you.
Thanks, Rob, and hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Well, here we are, 4 years and 5 months after the referendum, 3.5 years of political treacle, wrangling, uncertainty, confusion and indecision, 12 months almost since a general election when the country appointed a government with a mandate to get Brexit done, and now 35 working days to go. Now, all of us in this industry and the stakeholders around us know very well that there's more to getting Brexit done than the slogan would suggest. And of course, the devil lies in the detail. We're also aware now that most of that detail is contained within the document that the government published, the first iteration in July this year, the border operating model. 2 or 3 further iterations since July. And this is really giving us the platform now to start to prepare for the end of the transition period on the 31st of December. My own view is that probably as a result of COVID and probably 1 or 2 other false dawns in the run-up to our departure from the European Union, there's probably a little bit of apathy around there in terms of general level of preparedness. But as we all know now, 35 days to go. There is still some background noise going on around free trade agreement negotiations. And I think one thing that we ought to get out and make very clear this afternoon is that in terms of preparing for the 1st of January, we shouldn't be distracted by that. And we should have everyone out there understanding that actually, whatever the outcome of those negotiations, a free trade agreement will not put us back into the customs union. And the process, as defined in the border operating model, is going to be effectively a WTO process in terms of customs declarations, and in the case of export safety and security declarations, and quite a lot of process that hasn't existed for the last 40 years. So a lot of detail to unravel. And thanks to the great team at Multimodal who've assembled this panel this afternoon, we've got some real experts that have had their head into this detail now for as well, probably the last 4.5 years, and have seen this this latest mandate from the government emerge, and are here to help us this afternoon unravel some of this detail, to provide insights on the tactics, the quick wins, the tricks of the trade, may I say, and of course the mitigation of risks, and also to look at some of the opportunities that are coming our way as we get beyond the 1st of January next year. So what I'm going to do is come to the panel each in turn. We'll sort of take it in alphabetical order. I'll ask each of the panelists to sort of introduce themselves, and of course this is a little bit like that familiar TV program that we all know so well here in the UK. I'll sort of ask, what's your name and where do you come from? And ask each of the panelists to give a brief introduction of themselves and their company, and really just to share with us initially for the first sort of round of discussion, how they are preparing for the 1st of January within their own businesses, and perhaps to give us a feel of how prepared they see their customers being prepared for the end of the transition. And I think this level of preparedness is quite significant. We've just completed a survey within the UKWA membership, the UK Warehousing Association, for those not familiar with the acronym. And although 65% of our members feel that they are prepared themselves, 75% are saying that they feel that their customers are nowhere near prepared. So some significant kind of findings from the survey. And once we get down into this level of detail, I mean, just some other throwaway kind of stats, 41% of our members, and this is quite worrying because these are warehouse operators that prepare loads ready for export. 41% of them don't understand or know about the ISPM 15 regulations for wooden pallets, just for as an example. So I think there's quite a lot of detail that we can get through this afternoon. So let's move swiftly on. And first of all, I'd like to introduce Andrew Baxter, who is the Group Chief Executive at Europa Worldwide. Andrew, would you like to kick us off, please?
Yes, I can. Hi, so I'm Andrew Baxter. I am the Managing Director of Europa Worldwide Group. We are a mid-sized freight forwarder. We employ about 1,000 people. We have a turnover around £200 million. Our core business is groupage distribution between the UK and Europe. Although, full loads, part loads, but I mean, the European business probably represents about 80% of our overall business. So it's a very important thing for us, and therefore Brexit is a massive issue in our organisation, and being prepared for it is absolutely essential. The idea that we could not be prepared, I mean, is quite a frightening one, really. We have to make sure that we can satisfactorily move goods between the UK and Europe post-January. So we've done a huge amount of preparation going back to 2018. We've been having weekly Brexit meetings with a team of quite a reasonable sized team, probably 8-10 people, who have driven the agenda of Brexit preparations within our organisation. So we've done some sort of basic level Brexit preparation stuff, and then we've done some sort of more advanced preparations in terms of the way we've designed our product. But I mean, at a basic level, we've done a huge amount of work on IT and systems. We are now just about recruiting the last of about 45 additional customs people in the organisation, including a new head of customs, 5 management level people, and 40 or something people doing customs entries and so on and so forth. We will also have to staff up for additional administration around that. So we imagine probably 65 people or something like that in the end in order to implement Brexit. We've done various other things, in terms of increasing deferments accounts. We've expanded the size of our transit shed on the basis that there will be more goods on hold awaiting customs, and therefore we expect that we will need significantly more space to hold goods so that our physical operations don't grind to a halt. So we've got about 75% additional racking capacity within our transit areas. But other things, we increased our T-form guarantee to 70 million, increased our deferment accounts. We've got about 25 million of deferment accounts. We've done a huge amounts of training and so on and so forth. But the biggest single thing that we've done is we've opened 2 new customs agencies, one in Belgium and one in Calais. And we're recruiting the teams of people who go into those still now. Actually creating those agencies, very complicated thing, a huge amount of bureaucracy around creating customs agencies on the continent. And we've done that principally to create our Brexit customs product, which is a product called Europa Flow. The idea of that is it's basically a frictionless customs product, which works on really the following premise. And that premise is that the reason why goods will get delayed come January is mainly about the need to collect VAT and duty prior to the delivery of the goods. So you're going to export something, do an export entry, import it, do an import entry, but also, the VAT and duty need to be paid at the time of that import entry, and therefore prior to the delivery of goods. And from our perspective, that is the main thing that will cause delays of people's shipments. Therefore, we've created what is effectively a DDP product, it combined with what's called Regime 42, that allows the VAT to be zero rated, and it means that we bill the duty and customs fees back to the shipper in the UK, and therefore removes that element that is the thing that really creates delays of customers' shipments. So we are in the process of selling that product to our customers and seeing a high level of interest in shipping on DDP terms in that way, certainly from our customer base. Are our customers prepared? I don't think there's a real range. I think that some of them are very well prepared. A lot are not particularly well prepared. And, of course, some in the middle. I think it's one of those things that, it's cometh the day, then people will have to hand over their commodity code, the commodity codes, the CPC, the relevant information that they need to provide in order to ship their shipments. So I imagine a lot will be left to the last minute, but in the end, customers are going to have to hand over that information, and I believe very largely that they will. So all in all, I think it's a hugely complicated topic. I believe that we are in a good level of preparedness. Broadly speaking, I think it will be a bit hairy in January and so on, but broadly speaking, I think it will happen, and it will ultimately be okay.
That's a fantastic start, Andrew. Thanks very much for that. And I've made a few notes here. There's a few things that you've mentioned there that I'm sure we'll come back to during the course of the afternoon. Moving on to our next panelist, Barbara Buchek, who is Group Chief Commercial Officer at the Port of Dover. Right in at the sharp end down there, Barbara, and getting lots of focus with our big reliance on the short straits and the Dover corridor. So I'm sure you'll have a lot to share with us. Please, over to you, Barbara.
Well, first of all, thank you very much to Multimodal and you, Peter, for organizing the event. It is really important to continue to talk about this matter because we are just a few days away from Brexit and an end of the transition period, and there are yet still few things and boxes to tick off the list. And we are rushing through with a variety of conversations with the government and our customers. So just to introduce you to Port of Dover, for those who are unfamiliar with us, we're the shortest crossing to continental Europe. and we form what we refer to, and quite often is referred to as short straits route, together with the Eurotunnel. We are carrying about 60% market share of British continental EU trade, and it's simply because we're the right choice for the business due to the frequency of our crossings, 120 ferry movements per day, 110 miles of lorries. We carry 122 billion, or 70% of UK's trade in goods. And I think from a Brexit perspective, what we've done over the years, and it's staggering, the stats that Peter presented right at the beginning in terms of how long it's already been that we've been working on Brexit. We've put a lot of effort into working closely with the ferry companies that we work with, DFDS and P&O, government agencies and our sister ports in France, in making sure that the details of flows and how it all works on a short straight route is well understood. Peter was absolutely right in his introduction. The devil is in the detail, and when we first began working on the preparation for Brexit, it was very clear to us that not everybody understands how it works. So vast amount of government visits, variety of Secretary of States, ministers, you name it. I was trying to count when Peter was doing introduction of how many there have been since we started Brexit, and I lost my count. But I think what is really positive is that government is committed to keeping short strait open. The vast amount of money has been spent on investing in infrastructure to support this particular ro-ro trade that we are facilitating. Work has been done to develop pre-lodgement process for ferry ports, which is focusing on that traffic flows, which are so crucial to us. And that indicates to us that short strait traffic and supporting is key to government. They're also working with the ferry operators to making sure that the front end and the pre-declaration process is in place. And I think from process perspective, import to UK from Port of Dover's perspective doesn't really change. It remains unchanged. Those who traveled through Port of Dover, in Dover specifically, will know that we have no space for extra controls. So we are not building any extra control posts in Eastern Docks as you know it. That traffic will be, or those who will be selected for examination, will be directed to sites away from the port. And again, the government is investing in those sites and developing them. You will have to do a declaration prior to entering and prior to travel to UK. So once you get to Dover, you should be fine. Border operating model that has been mentioned already also recognizes that ro-ro traffic is different from container ports, and we're pleased to see that it focuses on that traffic moving. When we look into exports and traffic for destined for France or Europe, the positive that I can draw out of the work that we've done for the past 4+5 whatever years is that we've got a very good relationship with France and our French counterparts, who are the other receiving end of our traffic. Again, lorries have to be pre-declared for France, for customs. French colleagues have invested in their SI, Brexit system, partner in France, are keen to remain a gateway. So they have also invested vast amount of money in their infrastructure, additional spaces and border control points. I think from our perspective, that the details are, devil is in the details, as Peter said. We have, as a business, brought in excellent team building to make sure that we capture all those details. And that was probably the best preparation for Brexit that we've done. And trader readiness is key. And from our perspective, we've been making that quite clear to the government and our colleagues in government agencies, that bring all the details and all the attention that is required to our customers so that they can prepare themselves will be key for the traffic to continue to flow through Port of Dover. There are still some elements that are under discussion, but we're working positively with our colleagues in government.
Great, thanks, Barbara. And again, a great introduction and some key points that I'm sure we'll come back to. And I think has already sparked some questions coming in, particularly around the inspection requirements that you mentioned on plant and animal products. So perhaps through the panel later on, we can just talk about the detail of that in the border operating model in terms of the phasing, in terms of how that's going to be phased in this side. But there's one question particularly about what the arrangements are going to be on the continental side in Calais or Belgium. So we'll come back to that one. But great, thanks Barbara. We'll move on to our next panelist. As I said earlier, we've got some great experts here, and it's a great privilege to introduce my friend and colleague from the Fresh Produce Consortium, Nigel Jenny. I'm sure this whole withdrawal from the EU and the end of the transition period is going to affect different sectors in different ways. And of course, there's been lots of talk around these free trade agreement negotiations, particularly the automotive industry. And I think sometimes, we forget that 40% of the food that we consume in this country, is coming in from Europe. So great to have Nigel with us today to perhaps tell us a little bit more about the detail relating to this sector. Nigel, over to you.
Peter, thank you very much for the introduction. That will clearly cost me later, but good afternoon, everyone. And let me try and put some things in context. And perhaps I may not be quite as positive as my two previous colleagues about preparedness, but let's see how we go on that. In terms of who is FPC, FPC is the trade association for those companies that trade in the whole of the supply chain, from grower to retailer and beyond, of fruit and vegetables, cut flowers and plants. To put that into context, we as a nation import 65% of our fresh produce and 90% of our flowers. So the trade flows, both from Europe and from the rest of the world, are fundamental to feed the nation. And remember, particularly from Europe, many of these products are highly perishable. So the concept of potential delays or additional time being used in the supply chain to inspect from an official point of view or any other types of inspections remain a serious concern. We have been working with the UK government and other key stakeholders for years, as I'm being reminded at this moment in time, and yet we still have some serious questions to be answered. Whilst we have issued to members checklists of how to prepare, both for importing and exporting, and provided a comprehensive one-stop shop document to give every aspect of what you have to do and whatever government organisation you need to organise with for our individual products, which at the moment they run into around about 100 pages each. So it's getting quite complex. But in terms of where we are now, I would agree with my colleagues that, look, whilst the negotiations with the EU continue, we are in a situation where we're not going to be in the single market, we're not going to be in the customs union. So I think the key message for those that are still wondering about whether I need to prepare, I think the message is this really, is that business as usual has long since passed. So from an import point of view, which is where a lot of the produce is coming from Europe, as I've just explained, we will be having to manage both a European export position and a UK import position. So again, that adds time, cost and complexity to an absolutely driven just-in-time supply chain, which remains a concern. In terms of the many aspects which colleagues have already mentioned, in terms of the standard processes, customs and everything else, I understand that. That is similar to most products you will import or export. However, there are some unique aspects of our industry, such as marketing standards that are applicable in terms of importing some fruit and vegetables. By example, in terms of having information, Peter, I agree the bill of materials is a good starting point and clarifies a number of things. It is about the devil in the detail, and the fundamentals still remain unknown. So I would suggest as an industry, we're still trying to dig ourselves out of the treacle mine you mentioned earlier on to find the solutions from government to allow us to prepare and prepare fully. And by example, if I mention the marketing standards, we believe we understood the position and had understood the position for many months. The UK government changed its position fundamentally 3 days ago. So there is an example of, and when I say just change its position, that means that to export these goods from Europe to the UK, many businesses will need to provide what is termed a certificate of conformity. That means that is probably hundreds of thousands of additional certificates that have never been asked for before, and probably even more concerningly, that from a plant health point of view, those in the industry will say, well, do or I don't, I need a phytosanitary certificate. For most products, not all, but for most products, you will in the future require a phyto from Europe. And we estimate that equates to around about 2 million pieces of paper, because at the moment the UK government has not adopted the international e-phyto system, nor has an electronic system to manage this process, because our tried and trusted IT system for our industry is being replaced on the 1st of January with a system that we've never seen. So there is some concern about that concept, but I accept also from a customs point of view, moving from chief to CDS at some point is also a considerable challenge. However, I think moving on, a key aspect and key concern, although we do export material amounts of fresh produce as well, as we've already described, the majority is imported, and we do have concerns about the groupage position, about if I'm in that mixed consignment of mixed products from a range of suppliers to a range of customers and different types of products that may require an official government inspection for phytosanitary arrangements or not, as the case may be, it's a material concern, especially when I think you mentioned, Peter, that we are 35 days or working days from D-Day. We still don't know as an industry which products and at what level of official inspections will apply. Yes, I agree. There is a phased implementation phase starting in January and going through to the 1st of July, but it remains a serious concern, especially to those that are involved in the category that applies from the 1st of January. So look, we are very keen to have this discussion today, very keen to help the industry and others find solutions, but I don't think we should fool ourselves that there's a lot to be done yet and very little time to do it.
Oh, thanks, Nigel, and that does put very much a different slant from what we heard from Barbara and Andrew, and of course, as we get further into this, it just highlights this level of detail that we really need to start tackling now. And as we go into the discussion this afternoon, Nigel, perhaps we can just pick up on some of those issues and you know, what are the tricks of the trade and how are we going to mitigate some of these risks. Now, of course, the government tell us that nothing's going to be a problem here because we've now got the systems in place that we didn't have in 1992, and we're now a technology-driven nation and everything's going to be fine. And so on and so forth. So that gives me a very nice segue to bring in Martin Meacott, who's Director of Product Management at Descartes Systems, ex-Customs Officer, I believe, as well. Again, has had his head into all of this detail. So, Martin, from your side of things, then, from the system and technology point of view, you know, how are you seeing this? And again, you know, sort of level of preparedness that you're seeing out in the market.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, and thanks for putting a target on my back with the ex-customs officer reference. Apologies to everybody. They do give you your sense of humour back when you leave, by the way, so I'm okay now. For those that don't know Descartes Systems, first of all, we're a global logistics technology company, so not just focused on customs, but we do deal with transport management, routing mobile, global trade intelligence, which has an impact because of the tariffs and the rules that are changing. We also cover e-commerce, shipping and fulfillment, which is going to be impacted, a very great deal by the UK leaving the EU and the e-commerce regulations and moving low-value parcels. But my responsibility, as Peter said, is on the customs and regulatory side. I'm responsible for the European customs applications, including those in the UK. And yeah, a lot has been put on the customs systems, on the new systems. I'm unfortunately old enough to remember 1992 when we had a system called DEPS, I think it was back then. It was a nice green screen system. Nobody complained about it. Chief came in, and although its nickname at the time was "Can't Handle Import and Export Freight," so roll forward to when we're talking about CDS, and it just feels like a deja vu after 35 years. So what we're working on at the moment is there are a range of systems coming in. Obviously, we mentioned CDS as a replacement for Chief. That won't apply for the EU GB traffic from day one. But we as a software company, like many businesses, are fighting this on two fronts. We've got the EU GB frontier, and we're also dealing with the Northern Ireland protocol. And with Northern Ireland, CDS is clearly front and center as the system that will be used for making declarations from GB into Northern Ireland and from the rest of the world into Northern Ireland, and for any exports from Northern Ireland as well. So we're in a fairly good position with CDS. We've been on CDS for 2 years now, actually, when we were the first company to support traders going on live. We've got a number of companies operating it, albeit on what we would call simplified supplementary declarations. But we've been testing with the port systems, testing with HMRC, both on imports and exports. It's not perfect. Like I said, when Chief started, it didn't work perfectly. There were always some scenarios that caused people, myself including, scratching of heads. How do we get that into Chief? And I'm sure the same is going to be with CDS. It's been a challenge, not only as a government project, but an agile one. So there's, most people like to have a full set of specifications and then you build to that. This has been a case of building as we go. So, there's been a lot of changes and even more changes towards the end of December, particularly with Northern Ireland. So there's even some bits that are coming out for January that we can't test until the start of December. As well as CDS, leaving the EU means that we've got a whole range of other current systems that the UK has to build their own or have their own version. So we've got a UK Ncts as well as an NI Ncts. We're going to have the current safety and security solution in Northern Ireland, but then a GB safety and security system for the rest of the UK. EMCS, the excise movement system. Again, there's going to be a UK flavour and a Northern Ireland version. And then a brand new system is the goods vehicle movement service. So this is going to be from the 1st of January for goods moving to Northern Ireland and exports from Northern Ireland to GB, as well as any goods moving under transit, whether they're from the EU or between GB and Northern Ireland. But from the 1st of July, that system will also apply to any imports coming from the EU and any exports going from GB to EU as well. So when I look at my European applications, I look at the changes needed there, and they're relatively limited in taking the UK out of a code list that says you're an EU country and now you're non-EU. Maybe some increased integration with port systems, such as Portbase and Seapoint, RX Seapoint in Belgium. But then I look at the UK and the range of pain that's been put on ourselves in making all these system changes, some very late in the day, and not always available to people to test until very last minute. We're for our customers, we're in a fairly good position. Our system, our main UK system, is cloud-based, so it's quite easy to roll out updates, give people access to test systems to become familiar with it. Even saying that, though, in terms of our customer readiness, they're obviously more ready than most because they use the system today. They're using our systems to do customs declarations. But I think the general knowledge and confusion over the border operating model, the Northern Ireland process, what's actually required or not, I think that has led to a lot of lack of preparedness from traders, not for the lack of trying, but for the lack of being able to get clear answers from from HMRC, who, to be fair, a lot of the time have had their hands tied from the rest of the UK government in what information they can share. So, you know, a lot of the time, especially around Northern Ireland, when questions are asked, it's often the case, we can't tell you that, or we need further clearance before we can share that information, which obviously proves hugely frustrating for us as a software company and for traders that are trying to get their supply chains in any kind of order.
Thanks, Martin. And I think when we come back for a bit more discussion, perhaps we ought to just sort of cover the government system, you know, the system that the government are rolling out at the moment. That I think it's changed the name from Smart Freight now to something else, but and discuss this sort of Kent access permit a little bit as well. But yeah, really interesting. And of course, we put a lot of focus today so far on the short straits and Dover, obviously as our sponsors here today, and Barbara being on the panel. But you mentioned Northern Ireland there as well, which I think again is going a little bit under the radar at the moment. So that's also something that we should come back to. So sort of as we move around the UK, let's turn our attention north then for our last but not least by any means panelist. And introduce Ken Russell, who's director of Russell's up there in Scotland, and now also chairman of the rail freight group for the UK. Ken, if you could, pick up on these sort of themes around preparedness or something. But as I mentioned, introducing Nigel, I do see, all of these this detail affecting different sectors in different ways, and of course you're very close to the export trade out of Scotland, being primarily the whisky trade. Perhaps you could just give us a bit of an overview of how those guys are looking at this at the moment, and if you can, what's going on regarding excise movements, both export and import. Anyway, I'm sure Ken's got a lot to share with us, so over to you, Ken.
Thanks, Peter. Well, John Russell Transport, logistics provider based in Glasgow, Scotland. Whisky plays a big part in our day-to-day life, working life, and alcohol plays a big part in the Scottish leisure life as well. So the movement of excise goods, duty suspended excise goods, is absolutely key. So I'd like to spend a bit of time just taking you through the journey we're on with regards to the duty suspended alcohol products to and from EU member states. Now, currently, an excise movement and control system entry is made at the tax warehouse of dispatch, and this is electronically notifies the recipient tax warehouse of the intended movement. When the tax warehouse in the UK or the EU member state receive that consignment, they close the movement off, and effectively that's the movement complete. No border controls or additional submissions at border posts, customs offices, or exit entry for direct movements or indirect movements within EU member states. Now, the HMRC EU exit excise team at this current time have not issued full guidance on the replacement of the digital infrastructure to replace the current EU infrastructure, e.g. the Ncts, which is used currently for the control and movement of excise duty suspended alcohol products. I personally think much of this delay relates around to Northern Ireland, and under the radar or unable to bring it above the radar at the moment may be part of the problem. If effectively Northern Ireland will have EU controls together with the new UK controls running in tandem, and that's all still under negotiation. So post January the 1st, a direct export, which is a movement from a duty suspended alcohol from a UK tax warehouse to an EU member state without crossing any other borders. For example, a delivery from Glasgow via Dover to Calais to our tax warehouse in France. The UK tax warehouse will raise a UK EMCS movement to raise and raise an export declaration for the consignment. The UK EMCS movement covers the excise liability to the UK port of export. The UK consignor's shipping agent will close off the export declaration when the goods have been exported. An import agent based in France will raise the import entry when the goods arrive at Calais and will raise an EU EMCS movement to cover the excise liability on the movement of the duty suspended goods to the French tax warehouse. The French tax warehouse or the import agent will then close off the import entry, and the French tax warehouse keeper will close off the EU EMCS entry. So you can see quite cumbersome compared to where we are. But then you consider an indirect movement, which is the movement of duty suspended alcohol from a UK tax warehouse to an EU member state, but crossing other EU member states' territories to arrive at the destination tax warehouse. So an example of that would be Glasgow to Teesport to Zeebrugge, onward through Belgium to a tax warehouse in France. Now, the theoretical best case solution is, after raising an export declaration, to put the goods into transit in the UK using Ncts, the new computerized transit system. Now, don't be confused by that. The name would suggest current. It was actually established in 2003. And it's used currently as an option to move goods into Switzerland by some companies. The Ncts process allows the goods to move duty-free from the premises of the UK tax warehouse keeper, who is also an authorised consignor to a French warehouse keeper, who is an authorised consignee, without having to pay the consignment taxes in Belgium and or make any further declarations at the Belgian-France border. There is an option in both the direct and indirect export scenarios for the trader to pay account for all taxes and VAT at the port of import, but this isn't really advisable for duty suspended products, or excise products, I should say. So in theory, Ncts can be used for both direct and indirect exports. The whisky production sector has a concern that although Ncts is accepted EU customs procedure, currently not all EU member states will buy into it for the duty suspended movements of alcohol from the UK to or across their territories. So there's a grave nervousness about using this system as of the 1st of January. Ncts is also a customs-based system, so therefore it has a very rigorous eye on the movement guarantee front. For the movement of duty suspended alcohol, you have to have a movement guarantee to cover the value of the duty that's travelling. The way that's currently done is not very heavily policed, whereas if it goes into the customs regime, that would change dramatically and it will become very heavily policed. And therefore there is a danger that guarantees may be exhausted during the course of a journey, and therefore the goods are liable for being seized. And Ncts also has a very tight mandatory journey time. There is a similar risk of increased seizures of goods and fines if consignments are not meeting the journey times. So most whisky producers are adopting a very cautious wait and see attitude, and the consensus is that it will take at least 4 months before the best option for movement will have been identified. At the moment, as for what we're learning from our customer base, the intention is to have minimal stock movements from early to mid-December through to mid-January, where possible. All are agreed that journey times will be longer and increased administration and the guarantee costs. The procedures for the import of duty suspended alcohol from the EU member states into the UK is very much the same as the export, with minor exceptions, whereas consignment of duty suspended alcohol moving from a UK to the UK from France and travels through Belgium to exit the EU in Zeebrugge, the French tax warehouse will have to raise over and above the French export entry an EU MCS entry to guarantee the French and Belgian excise liability until the goods exit the EU, as the movement is deemed to be an indirect export. In all instances, a shipping agent will have to raise an import entry and a UK EMCS entry to cover the movement from the UK port of entry to the designated UK warehouse. In all instances, there is an option for the trader to pay and account for the taxes and VAT at port of entry. So as you can see, there's still quite a lot up there.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. And I mean, that's again, I think just highlighting again a level of complexity that we just haven't been used to, you know, in these markets for 40 odd years. And of course, you know, business has grown over that time as well. It also occurs to me, listening to you there, that you know, we can probably be facing some structural changes in some of those trade flows in terms of how logistics support is provided to those trade flows, that we mustn't assume that everything is just going to go on and carry on as normal, because people probably will be looking for different routes and, you know, different ports of entry and departure, perhaps with more concern around, you know, which borders are going to be crossed rather than just picking the shortest possible route. But we'll perhaps come back to that one. What I've picked up through all 5 sort of introductory comments there is the level of complexity. You know, Nigel talked about 2 million additional pieces of paper that we haven't been used to. Ken's just talked about the excise movements there. Martin, I lost count of the acronyms for the different number of systems that we're now going to be sort of playing with on all of this. And so I'd like to sort of go back to the panel. You know, we've talked, there's been a lot of noise about the number of intermediaries is what the terminology has sort of been referred to. I guess it's what we in the industry call the customs agents or the brokers or the guys on the desk that are going to, you know, be completing these 200 or 250 million customs declarations, again, to get a sense of where we are and are we ready, and has the government funding, you know, been taken up on this. Andrew, perhaps I can come back to you again to sort of kick us off on this one. You talked very eloquently about the training and recruitment, or perhaps the other way around, the recruitment and training that you've put in place at Europa. What's your sense across, you know, your business, and also what you're hearing about your competitors and the other operators out there? I mean, is the industry going to be ready? I mean, and not just our side of the fence. What about the border force and the customs officers that are going to have to police all of this? I mean, have we got enough intermediaries recruited and trained? And, you know, is this an ongoing program for the next 6 months, 12 months, 5 years? How do you see this from a recruitment and training perspective?
From my perspective, I think that our competitors are not going to want to lose their customers. We do not want to lose our customers. You know, there is going to be a reduction in the volume of goods that move between the UK and the EU. That's probably, I'm guessing, a 20% reduction. Maybe it will be more than that. I don't know.
And
but
Andrew, is that in a consolidation sense? Do you see, you know, listening to Nigel there, you know, this sort of farm to fork 72 hours, little and often supply chain that we've been used to? Do you see a reduction in volume through consolidation?
I think I think there's some scope for reduction because of consolidation, but I think that clearly there will be a literal reduction in volume, and the reason for that is that people are not going to want to import goods into the UK, pay duty on them, and then send them to the EU and pay duty on them again. You know, people are going to want to avoid double duty, so therefore they will bring products that are going to be consumed in the UK, they'll bring that directly into the UK, and products that are going to be consumed in the EU are going to be taken directly into the EU, and therefore there will be less cross-border movements in future than there are now. So the point I was making is that the marketplace itself is going to reduce in size. neither myself or our competitors want to lose business, and therefore it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we have the customs staff in place to be able to facilitate the movement of our customers' goods. And I would say very broadly that the freight forwarding industry in the UK is gearing up to make sure that they have the people in place to make that happen. Any freight forwarder who sat there in the UK not putting in place the customs staff to facilitate the ongoing business of their customers must have a death wish, because literally they're going to lose their customers, and where are they going to end up? So, certainly I'm hoping that in my business we don't lose any volume because we win business from competitors who are not properly prepared. But having said that, as a whole, I think there's a slight misconception around this. I think what the government is expecting to see is lots of customs brokers popping up with, they've got 200 new customs brokers who are working in this office here, and we can see them. And that's not the reality of it. The reality is that those customs brokers effectively are going to be staff employed in freight forwarders that are not necessarily just identifiable as they are the customs staff who are going to do this job. So I would say that very much it is the case that people are staffing up to make sure that they can do the job. But I just don't think it's as visible as the government might hope it would be.
Martin, can I just come to you with the same sort of question, your take in terms of this ramping up of staff in the sort of forwarding community? I mean, what Andrew's just outlined resonates with me. In one of the meetings that I attended recently with the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Michael Gove, I mean, he threw it. He was getting beaten up by the industry for lack of time to prepare and so on and so forth. And he threw it back that, look, I can't understand why you guys aren't getting on with this. You've got a 400% increase. It's like a windfall that's coming your way and all this other customs work. Why aren't you and your industry investing in this? And we, the government, have thrown 50 million quid your way, to help with that process. So again, it's very easy to back with big slogan statements. The devil, of course, is in the detail again. But how do you see this take up of intermediaries going?
Yeah, I think as Andrew said, I mean, it was very difficult, I think, for many forwarders, brokers leading up to end of transition in committing to extra staff until they had customers who were identified as yes, they needed something, and they would commit to a long, reasonable term agreement. Nobody's going to employ a member of staff on a permanent scale until you know that there's going to be a job for them for 1, 2, 3 years. So I think that was a challenge for a lot of brokers. We are seeing people who maybe are not traditionally associated with the broker market coming into the broker market because we're getting approached for new entries, if you like, looking for software to do declarations. We're seeing traders who would have traditionally used a broker, looking at the volumes coming in and thinking, well, now the cost, is this something I can do in-house? Maybe more on exports than imports, where there's some more detailed knowledge required. I think anecdotally, yes, we do get contacts from perhaps smaller traders that are struggling to find a broker. With some brokers saying what you say, Andrew, about protecting the business you've got. Some brokers are kind of just looking at, yes, we want to keep the business, we want to satisfy our customers, we're not taking on any new business. So there are companies, I think, that will struggle finding a broker, and maybe it's they've just got to shop round a bit more to find somebody who's willing to take on new business. But I think we will see over a period of time an expansion in the broker market, whether it's an increase in staff within forwarders. We see that. We see, some of it is being outsourced as well. So those brokers may not even be in the UK. They might be in other countries working for the large forwarders or brokers. And the same new entries to the system as well. And obviously everybody is keen on how can we make the process as slick as possible? How can we use data, reuse data in the processes? So again, people are looking at options of automation, information portals, integrations with their larger customers about getting that data, so that the amount of time spent in preparing declarations is reduced to as much as possible.
And Barbara, coming to you, just from a port perspective, we mentioned possibly some structural changes here, managing these trade flows in a slightly different way to the way we have in the past, and possibly some consolidation. Andrew's mentioned reduction in volume. I mean, does that resonate with you? Are you planning around some of those things? How are you seeing, people have been talking about a move from accompanied to unaccompanied, and obviously certain ports up the East Coast are pushing the value of other options. How do you see it from the overall kind of port perspective?
I think from our perspective, just touching a little bit on the point of readiness of intermediaries, I think Martin is absolutely right. Although there was a lot of talk about training, I don't think anyone had any particular spare cash at the moment during COVID in particular to train for just in case. And I think quite a lot of people also we're still living in some hope that it will not materialize or it won't be needed. We still have a lot of people, even when you look at settled status and Europeans applying for settled status, how low uptake is for that particular process that is required, and the government was very clear that it's needed, and yet people are not doing it. And I think we also hear quite a lot of people saying that there will be a trade deal and everything will be okay. Again, people are missing the point that customs declaration will still be required, trade deal or no trade deal. We see, from Dover's perspective, we see some movement in preparation. And as I said earlier, trade readiness is key. There was a lot of focus initially on managing queues, and we were quite clear in our liaison with government that that's not the focus, and that's not what should be the focus on. The focus should be on ensuring that processes are put in place that continue to support that trade flow. We're seeing our customers at the moment, DFDS and P&O, looking to offer the support to their customers, to the haulage community. We are seeing some movement in people requesting some support from us, and even premises in Dover. So people have somehow woken up to the issue. And in response to your question about moving and comment that Andrew made about moving away from short straits and from Europe, yes, potentially, and we said it all along as well, that if you do move, if you do make it difficult, and by you I mean the government, then the risk is that trade does not flow anymore. So, for example, factories will be moving away from UK to mainland Europe and vice versa. But I think initially it'll take time. So it won't happen in year one, it won't happen in year two. I have seen, and we closely monitor our colleagues from UK MPG, so UK Major Ports Group, Peel Ports and ABP, putting out marketing with regards to opportunities to move to the other routes. I think the issue that you have there, and we looked at it very carefully together with Eurotunnel, the reason why people go for a short strait is because of frequency of crossing. All the other ports, if there will be a disruption, it'll be everywhere. It won't be just at short straits. And if there was any opportunity to recover the disruption when the bottleneck stops, it will be on short straits, because we can uplift that traffic, and we've demonstrated it on numerous occasions in the past. There might be some shifts to unaccompanied, but it's not necessarily just from Brexit perspective. There are other factors contributing to that: driver shortages, changes in regulations when it comes to conditions of the drivers, environmental aspects. So yes, we will probably see that, but I think ultimately the business will always choose what's best for the business, what's the fastest, most cost-effective route to the market. And I don't quite believe the 20% that Andrew is referring to.
Okay, well, we'll perhaps come back and challenge that. Nigel, again, structural changes. There's been a lot of talk about, probably pre-COVID talk actually, about the switch. There's always air freight as an option, and Obviously, your sector is a heavy user of that particular mode, the air freight mode of transport. But of course, COVID means that, you know, belly hold cargo availability capacity is stretched at the moment, with the huge reduction in tonnage actually up in the air flying. I mean, do you see structural changes? Is air freight going to be an issue? How do you see this?
Okay. I'd look at this as, in a similar way to Barbara, actually, remember, we're talking about the nation's food supply here and flour supply. It's an essential commodity and we need to import it because we don't produce it ourselves. Therefore, as an industry, if we're talking about the dynamics of how the industry operates, it will be driven by the political decisions that are being made at the moment and the costs of those trade flows, be that duties, be that delays, be that whatever it may be. But we get to a situation that we need to find the least cost, most effective route, whatever that is, either from Europe or from somewhere else in the world. And we may be in a position that our industry faces tariffs from Europe that, subject to the continuity agreements that are being negotiated with other non-European countries, there could well be a driven change in trade because of tariff differentials. However, the fundamental issue is when we talk about air freight, the industry does use air freight quite extensively. It would normally be using passenger planes for obvious reasons. They're not flying in anything like the volume that we were. However, when you look at the stats, 70% of all that produce that's arrived in a plane to Europe is going to Europe, not to the UK. Simply because, frankly, some key European airports for fresh produce are more organised and more effective. And that is a criticism of any of the key UK airports. If I'm criticising anybody, it's the historical mindset of some key government agencies on insisting in outdated processes that just don't apply in the rest of Europe. So as an industry, we will continue post-Brexit to use European airports unless the government wakes up and changes its mindset and offers a commercially effective solution to import and export using air freight.
Is that an opportunity, Nigel, now going forward? I mean, if we are taking control, and this is absolutely now within our control, surely then we can stop this. You know, I'm familiar from my past of the thousands of containers a year that were bringing Brazilian beef in over Rotterdam, simply, as you said, because of the regime and how the regime was policed in this country. So is that a structural change that we can see as an opportunity going forward?
I think it's a significant opportunity for the UK industry. However, we do need to have a like-minded government that is supporting that position. At the moment, it appears not to be, you know, and no criticism to Barbara or Dover or any other major port that's building facilities to provide inspections. You know, our key trading partners don't manage imports in that manner. They have highly effective solutions at their supply chains warehouses, not another point in the supply chain.
Yeah,
cost and complexity.
Well, we're sort of singing off the same song sheet here. You know that we've been lobbying around this for quite some time, and lo and behold, we must give the government some credit, because maybe they're now listening, and you know, their declaration of building these multi-purpose inland customs facilities is now on the agenda, because you're absolutely right. This does not have to be done necessarily within the boundary of the port, does it? And that's why I wanted to bring Ken in on this, because Ken's, you know, from a rail freight point of view, again, Ken, what are you seeing from opportunities in terms of alternative modes of transport, and how does that tie into future opportunity in terms of inland, you know, inland terminals and inland depots, and how do we get that opportunity to build more inland infrastructure for some of this, aligned, you know, with the government to put the policy in place to allow it to happen? What's your view on that, Ken?
I do see that as a positive way forward. I think rail has got a part to play, and you know, as we get into the driver shortage issue and you know, the potential of blockages at ports, there's no reason why rail can't play that part, and there's no reason at all why you cannot route product from a terminal in inland France to a terminal in, you know, Daventry or wherever in the UK. And if you take, you know, the likes of Durft at Daventry, where there's currently something like 6 million square feet of warehousing and an additional 6 million square feet currently being developed. If we can resolve these inland terminals properly and get them truly connected, then that is an opportunity that we should garnish. You're on mute, Peter. Peter.
Peter, you're muted.
Sorry, guys. I thought I'd press the button. Give me a thumbs up, somebody. Can you hear me now? I was just saying we've got hundreds of questions coming in here from a very large audience today. So I'm going to see if I can sort of consolidate some of these and fire these into the panel. And if anyone sort of has got the answer to this, please jump in. There's one here as an example. If I ship with Europa on CIP terms for a customer in Germany, can Europa clear goods in Germany? And will they travel under your customs guarantee? That's one for Andrew.
Under CIP, do they mean CIF terms, presumably?
Possibly.
Effectively, we would do the export declaration in the UK. We would do the import declaration into France. We would charge the duty back to the UK shipper. And we would charge the customs fees back to the UK shipper. We wouldn't do an import entry into Germany. We would do the import entry into France.
Okay, another one here, I think, similar question. If exporting general goods from the UK to Italy by road through France, do we need to use Ncts transit to cross EU border points before customs clearing at the border in Italy?
Well,
Andrew,
if you're going,
I think probably best served on that one.
Sorry, by me.
Yeah,
Yes.
could you pick that?
Sorry, do you need to do it on the T form? Well, it depends. Ultimately, if you're intending to do the import clearance in Italy, then yes, you would have to do it on the T form. If you were doing it under DDP terms and clearing it, well, in Calais, then it wouldn't need to be under a T form, because you would clear it in Calais, then it would be in free circulation and you could move it around as you do today.
I'll direct this question towards Martin. It says here we use several forwarders and fast parcel carriers to ship globally at present. Can we continue to use each of these for direct representation for import and export entries to Europe, or do we need to employ a broker agent to act as port agent for them all?
So I guess the question is a bit like Andrew said, on which side of the border we're talking about. So I mean, if they're using UK agents and fast parcel operators, and they continue to do the export declarations as they do today, most of the fast parcel operators, depending on who we're talking about, will have departments in EU member states. But whether you need a broker to act on your behalf on the other side, on the EU side, well, yes, whether that's a broker like Europa with their Belgium and French offices, or whether you need a broker in the Netherlands or Germany, really depends on those countries. And I think just to add to what Andrew said, I think the model you're talking about, Andrew, is one of a fiscal representation as well. So I think that's the important thing to note, that when you're clearing at the first point of entry from a movement to another member state, you do need to appoint a fiscal representative who will also take into account your VAT, your European VAT reporting requirements as well.
Okay, and Nigel, one for you here. This I think is in your area, similar, but it's really around the the inspection elements. What is the policy of ferry companies on veterinary cargo booking for export from the UK, fresh and frozen? Does the exporter have to show appointment with EU veterinary authorities for phytosanitary inspection?
Well, for vet inspections, that's meat, which we don't cover, Peter. But if we're talking
Could you
about,
cover it?
if we're talking about plants, for example, from a phytosanitary point of view, if I was exporting from the UK, if I was exporting from Europe to the UK, for most products, you would need a phytosanitary certificate, and you would have to have lodged the relevant information to support that export from Europe, and at the same time lodge information to manage the import into the UK, and basically vice versa if you're going the other way.
Okay, that covers it. That's good. Let's just have a look down here. Sorry guys, it's a bit clunky here. I'm picking these up on a WhatsApp thing. Yeah, there's we sort of touched on this a little bit in terms of capacity. Barbara, I'll come to you on this. With driver shortages or unwillingness of EU-based drivers wanting to come to the UK, will we see a move to unaccompanied trailers? And could Dover cope with this?
So from our perspective, we see that shift overall, and to some extent, for the reasons that you've mentioned, is not necessarily just Brexit related. We always look at opportunities going forward as Port of Dover. Eastern Docks, as everybody knows is limited, but we've got space in Western Docks where we could work towards accommodating unaccompanied traffic in the future. So if there is any unaccompanied operators that would like to consider Dover as an opportunity, please, details will be provided following from this seminar. No, but in all seriousness, yes, I think this is something that we need to plan for a variety of reasons. Intermodality, even from the environmental perspective, kind of would be probably best place to talk here about rail freight. It will be the future to some extent.
Okay,
Peter, can
Martin,
I
I'll come to you again here. Sorry, yeah, please go ahead.
Barbara's point is very valid in terms of the rail element. It's not only the through tunnel rail element, it is also from the ports, where it could play a part as direct shipments from the port, alleviating any potential congestion and moving traffic straight into an inland terminal where it could be then cleared.
Okay, and I'll ask anyone that's firing their questions in, please try and put your name. And I've got an anonymous one here. Nigel, best coming to you. So should we expect shortages of food on the shelves in January?
No. Is that by Mr. Anonymous response as well? Look, I think what I would say
is our sector. Go ahead. Sorry, Nigel, I lost you there.
Sorry. The succinct answer was no. However, the industry will work extremely hard to resolve the major issues that I highlighted earlier on, but we are committed to feeding the nation.
Brilliant. Okay. I did say we'd come back to this question here from Stephen Smythe. Is the Kent access permit, or Kermit as it's become known, coming to force or not? I checked last week and I could not find a way to apply for one. Martin, I promised to come back to you on this. Can you just give us a couple of minutes on this government system and the Kent access permit? Because I think there'll be a lot of people in the audience that won't have heard about this.
Yeah, I'll try. I mean, technically, it's not a customs system. It's a Department of Transport system to try and manage traffic flow through Kent. So I think somebody obviously in a marketing department thought they'd be a good idea to call it smart freight. I'm not sure whether they suddenly saw the light or were challenged because it's a trademark of somebody in Australia. But it's now called, I think, check an HEV, is it ready to cross the border, which is obviously a snappier title than smart freight. I mean, if anybody, you can actually go online, and there is a beta test version that's been doing the rounds, a link to an online form, and that's all it really is. It's just a guided form asking for details of when you plan to travel, the vehicle registration number, do you think you're ready, how are you carrying any goods that require a document, if so, do you have the document, and if you say yes to everything, it puts up on screen a nice little permit which says yes, you're good to travel through Kent. It's not a system as far as I would call it. It's not an API or anything else. It is just a more guided learning. You know, have you got everything? Tick all the boxes. Okay, fine, you can have a permit. If you manage to say yes, I'm carrying flowers to back to Holland. No, I don't have a phyto. Then it will say no, you can't travel. You're not ready. But there's no real intelligence. It's not linked up to any custom system or anything else. So, but as I say, the link is out there. I guess through trade associations, people can go on there and try it just to become familiar. But I think there was this great worry of how do I train my staff into how to use it? It's literally 5 pages and ticking boxes. It's not a system. It's not like doing a customs declaration.
Who's actually responsible for doing that? Is this going to be the driver of the vehicle, or is it going to be the operator?
I would say
in the back office somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it falls part of the back office, haulage company, transport company, whoever's going to be, you know, in the same way that people are preparing CMR documents, transport documents, putting things together. You know, this is just going to be another thing they're going to have to prepare before the truck leaves the depot. Obviously, if people aren't using a haulage company or a carrier, they're using their own vehicles, then those businesses are going to have to do it themselves. I mean, to be honest, if I was, you know, if I'm traveling through Dover and I'm going through Kent, you know, that's just one of the many things I have to worry about. You know, there's going to be an export declaration. There's going to be, you know, we talked about transit and maybe Ncts. There's going to be a Kent access permit, but then you've got to think you need to get on the other side. You've got to get into France. And French customs are insisting that you've done either a transit or a French import declaration before you can go to France. And you need to potentially have a French logistics envelope handed over to the ferry company or the train operator to prove that's all done so that they can communicate that to French customs. So, you know, the Kent access permit is, or the Kermit, that's a good one. I've not heard that one before, so that's a good one. It's just one part of a selection of paperwork and documents that people are going to have to get ready.
Okay, Barbara, I'm conscious that you may have to leave us shortly for your next meeting. Before you go, would you like to just sort of give us your view in terms of you know, what the opportunities are? We've talked a lot about the risks this afternoon and so on in terms of how we're going to manage that and prepare for that. But how do you see things maybe in 6 months' time? Things are going to have to settle down, aren't they, after this initial kind of January potential disruption period? But you know, once we get into, say, this time next year, you're seeing some opportunities?
Absolutely, yes. I think from following from what Nigel said and Nigel's positive response to the fact that there will be no issue with food shortages on our shelves, what we've always seen in the logistics industry, it's a very agile industry that adapts to what is thrown at it, and a variety of things have been thrown at it at different times in history. Clearly, from opportunities perspective, there'll be loads of work for customs agents. So train up, you'll be in high demand. Unaccompanied is the opportunity. Potential shift in the logistics chain that Andrew referred to in terms of the percentage of traffic moving across the border. We are yet to hear about what free ports concepts that the government is promoting will throw out, and potentially that will eliminate those double declarations issues that Andrew referred to. And again, who will be the winner from the lottery of the 10 ports or more that the government is looking to promote as free ports, we'll yet to see. So I think there's lots of opportunities going forward. I don't necessarily see that the disruption will be on the 1st of January. I think it'll be going forward through the months to come, and obviously there will be further deadline of July that we all know. So not everything kicks in from the 1st of January. Some of it kicks in from July. So we're yet to see it spread out a little bit, but there will be opportunities.
Okay, and actually there is one specific question, Barbara, if you could just before you go. Someone is asking what kind of visibility you provide at the port. The question is, Barbara, can a company bringing cargo through Dover see in real time how the consignment is moving through the port?
Well, when you come to Dover and you have all the declarations in place and you've done your homework before you arrived to the port, you will be traveling through the port as you have before. So the key for everybody, as I said several times, is trader readiness and making sure that you don't get stopped. Through Dover, you should have no issues. Obviously, if you are not ready, then you will be potentially exited. If you do not have relevant documents to present at your check-in, theoretically, the ferry operators should not allow you to board. If you are part ready and you have the right barcodes to show at the check-in, you will join the ferry, and on the ferry you will see the red, amber, green system that will tell you which lane you are allowed to take when you arrive in France. Again, the same when you arrive in UK, as I said in my introduction. If you have done your homework before and you have done all your declaration before you traveled, you will travel through Dover without any issues. If you are selected for examination, you'll be going to one of those inland sites. So as far as Dover, if you have done your work, if the trade is ready, you'll be traveling through Dover without stopping.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. Andrew, there's a few questions coming in here that I'll sort of consolidate. It's really around this sort of capacity issue that we touched on earlier. I guess the sort of consolidation of the question is there going to be sufficient capacity if this, European hauliers that we rely on, is there going to be sufficient capacity if there's an unwillingness of the foreign hauliers to be coming to the UK as a result of all of this added complexity?
I believe that will broadly be okay. Ultimately, I don't massively believe in the, there will be huge queues at the ports thing, because I don't believe that people are going to send trucks to the ports if they have not got the relevant documentation. So, and I think it is, as Barbara said, it's a very flexible and dynamic industry. And, to the extent that there was any shortage at any point, the price would move up and people would move in order to take advantage of that. I don't, actually, I see it the other way around. I see that there will be some drop off in volume, and that will provide capacity in its own way. So, and I certainly believe in January next year, there will be a lot of stockpiling going on pre the end of the year. So in January itself, I would say that will be a low volume month, and I think that there will be adequate haulage capacity about. So that is not an issue that I see as particularly concerning.
Okay. And there's a question here about impact on exports from the UK to Russia. Will we be needing to issue a transit document? That's probably one for you, Andrew, there as well.
As far as I know, it's not really impacting anything on trade between the UK and Russia. That will remain as it does today. Yes, I would have thought it needs a transit document. It needs exactly what it needs today.
Yeah, I think the difference maybe in the idea is that today, if you export via, say, Latvia or Lithuania or Finland, you'd be doing an indirect export, because it would be a UK export and then an EU office of exit. Obviously, we're not in that group anymore. So yeah, you would exit the UK at, say, Dover or wherever, and then it would have to move transit, because otherwise you'd have to do an import declaration on arrival in the EU. Now, that transit could either be raised in the UK through to the point of exit of the EU, or you could raise it on entry into the EU, but that's not probably advisable.
And Martin, while you've got the floor, as it were, there's a few questions here really regarding the Northern Ireland Protocol and the Trader Support Scheme. Could you just give us a couple of minutes in terms of your view of how that's set up to work, and what people need to do or where to go to find further information if they are moving to and from Northern Ireland?
Sure. I mean, the Trader Support Service, I think, is open for registration. I think there's a website already available. I guess if you, I don't know the website off the top of my head, but I'm sure if you Google Trader Support Service, you'll end up there. So my understanding is that is now open for registrations. I mean, it is a service rather than a system. So, you know, primarily it's got a number of roles. One is education. To educate traders that don't know anything about customs. Obviously, they've never maybe dealt with customs before, if all they've dealt with is GB to Northern Ireland. But then the aim is that, yes, in the cases of people that can't do their own customs declarations or don't have a means of doing them, then they should step in as a service and provide that functionality. Now, how they're going to do that, I think, is still to be determined. You know, I would imagine there would be some kind of engagement with them, whether that's through a portal or through a call center or something, I would imagine. And then they would fulfill the declarations, whether that's an import declaration or a safety and security declaration. But there's clearly got to be that engagement both with the importers, exporters, hauliers involved in those movements.
Peter, can I just add one point to that, if I may? Please,
yeah, go ahead, Nigel.
Really just to remind, if you like, the fresh produce industry, for the first time, if you're trading with Northern Ireland or into Ireland itself, you will need a phytosanitary certificate, which needs to be issued by the relevant UK authority before you can export. So again, there is an additional element of that trade, which is important to people to be very aware of.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that as well, and probably the excise trade as well. Is there's still a lot of information to come out about how it will work and exactly what is required. But I think people shouldn't necessarily rely on it as the panacea to the Northern Ireland protocol. Is that there may be some industries where they can provide advice, but they may not be in a position to actually do the end-to-end submissions, whether that's, as you say, Peter, the phytosanitary, or whether it's dairy, whether it's meat, alcohol. Yeah, there may be some areas where the traders actually have to do something themselves.
And I think there's a question here that we'll perhaps take from each of the panelists. The question is, how much will the regulatory bodies themselves, such as HMRC, Border Force, Port Health, be the principal cause of delays rather than the logistics industry? The principal cause of delays on either side of the channel. Opinions, please. And I think this probably ties back to the earlier conversation about this, when we were talking about intermediaries and ramping up and so on and so forth. And we obviously want to work with our colleagues in the government agencies and the civil servants, and not just get into kind of blame culture. But you know, I guess the question is, are they ready? If we're ready for this, are they ready for this? Ken, kick us off. Can you're muted, Ken. While Ken's unmuting himself, Barbara, did you want to make a comment on this?
I think it's a very good question and a very timely one as well, because we are expecting National Audit Office to issue a report tomorrow on UK border preparedness. So I think some key findings will come out from that report, and we'll be all reading it with great interest. So I think it's a good question. There was a lot of work done. I know from Dover there was a lot of recruitment going on. Same question probably applies to vets. How many vets have been hired to look into the inspections? We'll yet to see.
Yeah, we'll see. Ken, you were giving us a masterpiece of information up there, but you were on mute. What were you saying?
Apologies, I was saying go to Barbara first because she's got to go.
This is almost as good as a live event, isn't it? Nigel, how do you see it from the authorities' point of view?
Look, as I've already said, I think, Peter, is that we remain keen to receive information about levels of physical inspections for a whole host of products. So whilst I would say the government should be prepared because they have more information than anyone else, from a row point of view, we are talking about a 24/7 operation. So how they choose to operate will fundamentally change in the way they normally do at deep sea ports, for example. So it's a whole culture change for them, and it's for an industry that actually has got hours of shelf life, not many days. These are not manufactured products. So we're keen to work with them to find solutions, but actually it needs to be a very radical rethink of their current offer.
Okay.
Peter, could I contribute something?
Okay, guys. Well, look, I'm conscious of the time here. I'd like to just, as the moderator here, say thanks very much to the panel. I think, given the circumstances that we're in, this has been a great opportunity to share information. To the audience, thanks for joining us and listening in, and for firing your questions in. I'm sorry I've not done a great job of getting through all the questions, but I'll talk to Rob Jarvis offline and see if we can maybe collate these questions into a kind of FAQ and put some answers together to get back to you all. No, thanks to all the panelists for this afternoon, and to the audience. Hopefully it's helped provide a further level of information. I'm not sure whether we've demystified the whole sort of complexity around what's coming at us on the 1st of January. Again, thanks very much to everyone, and Robert, back over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Peter. It was fascinating, and as Peter alluded to, we have several questions that I think we were unable to field, so I'll do my best to collate those and ask the panel for their comments, which we'll post to you. Barbara's gone now, but I'd like to thank her and the Port of Dover for their support. Thank you for joining. But a really big thank you to our panelists, to Ken, Andrew, Martin, and Nigel, and of course, Barbara and Peter. Thank you very much for giving of your time today. It was very interesting, much appreciated, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Now, depending on the time lag, this might still be coming out on YouTube, so we'll just wait for